Brad, how you doing?
I'm great. How are you doing, Gary?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. You and I offline were talking about Star Wars. It sounds like you might be a geek like me. I did not realize that you were a Star Wars fan. That makes you even a better person.
I am a big Star Wars fan. I always have. You'll have to look next time I do a video from my house. You'll see some Star Wars Legos behind me. I rotate them out from time to time. So yes, a bit of a closet nerd on that front too.
There you go. Listen. Any Star Wars, any Force friends and foes. Even if you're on the dark side or the light side, love either one of them. It was interesting at Celebration last week. The larger cheers came from, are you on the light side or the dark side? The dark side. People like the dark side more. I think they like the conflict, bro.
I think unfortunately, a lot of people are rather comfortable in the dark side conflict, but I think people like to imagine themselves there. I think actually, I guess it was about a year and a half ago, I went to Disneyland and went through the Star Wars experience, and it was one of the most incredible immersive experiences I've been in as an adult. And it is really truly a reminder of those types of experiences that people want to feel, they want to have. They don't want to just sit somewhere, right? But you felt like you were in that world, and so I loved every minute of that. I felt like a kid again.
I agree with you 100%. I think what's interesting is when you walk through it, you feel like you're on a planet in a different world, and that immersive thing. It's interesting that you start that way. And by the way, this was not planned. That's actually a good lead into the current state of the ProAV market, which is what this session is all about. Because I definitely think that we are at a place now where we as AV, and see if you agree with me on this, Brad, because you and I haven't talked about this offline before this session. But I think that, as integrators, if I'm an integrator and I'm watching this, I think I'm going to have to become more of a technologist than an AV integrator and help my clients build better experience with AV, make this experience more seamless. And we could say that for years and years and years, but let's be honest. We didn't have the technology for many, many years to make things seamless. You had to press this and go over here, and you had to do certain things to make things work. But now we do have the technology to make it seamless, even such that we can interact with it through gestures and voice.
Right, exactly. Well, I think, in your opening segment, you were talking about the difference between trade shows and these launch platforms. And actually, for my whole marketing career in this industry, I've not really viewed trade shows as a launch platform. Rather, I have always viewed them as an opportunity to get together and spend time with our integrators and with the channel. That's most important. And launch products outside of the event, because getting together is the most important thing. Because ultimately, what we do as an industry isn't just about black boxes. It's about what we create when we bring those black boxes together, and those experiences that can be developed, whether it's in a meeting room, an auditorium, a classroom, or any other kind of high impact space, or any place that people gather. There's a huge opportunity for us as an industry. We love to talk about it. We love to inspire the channel, inspire customers with what's possible, and then of course talk about the technology that enables that. But we're at such a unique moment, I think, with the industry.
Yeah, and I tend to agree with you. I think if you wait till a trade show to launch everything, it's going to get lost because you're launching with 200 other companies at the same time. And I want to specifically ask you about 3 specific trends in AV. One is AI. Second is, where are we with return to offs? Third are, sort of the changing decision maker climate out there in our industry. So let's start with the obvious low hanging fruit, AI. In our everyday world, if you're not using AI, it's sort of like you're way behind. I remember when the internet started, and I had friends that weren't in technology in the late 90s that were not using the internet, and I was shocked, right? But they eventually did, right? They eventually, and some of them actually have surpassed me in their applications for the internet. So even if you're a late adopter, doesn't mean you're left on the side of the road. But I'm curious where you see AI specifically in ProAV. Where are the touch points? Where is AI actually having an influence? And what should we watch for in the future?
Yeah, so those three topics are certainly three that we spend a lot of time talking about and thinking about as it relates to AI specifically. I think that there are several big opportunities. We at Crestron are focused on a few of them, and we will talk about it. But everyone has said AI will be so hugely transformative to every industry, and that is certainly true for our industry and what we're doing. But I think that one of the things that we need to consider is AI is not just this nebulous thing. It is a set of technologies that can enable new solutions, new products, new capabilities, and new functionalities. And so if you think about it as it is software that is making the experience better, that's how we're approaching it. And so we're actually pulling that apart and looking at it in a couple of different ways. One is how can we leverage AI to improve the solutions that we provide today, make it better easier for an end user, easier to deploy. Some examples that we have released today: intelligent video, right? We just released with our Automate VX multi-camera system, the visual AI face direction, making it easier to switch. It's seamless to switch between cameras to give you the best front-on view of the active speaker. And so we will continue to invest in bringing that kind of intelligent capability within there. The next area, as it relates to improving our solutions, is how can we use AI to make the deployment and the management of the technology even easier, right? If you can make it so that the AV team within a customer or an integrator, it's really easy to do that. That's where we think is a really obvious and great application of AI within our industry. So that's one. How can we embed AI into all of our solutions? The second, of course, is how can we integrate the best AI services into the meeting room or the meeting space to deliver a really good experience? One of those, an obvious one, of course, is our work with Teams and Copilot, Zoom, right? When you have really great hardware in the room, you get a better AI experience, right? The better audio quality that you have in the room, the better transcription that you get. And so integrating those AI services is a hugely important part of what we're doing. The other thing too is from a development standpoint and a dealer standpoint is how can we expose our tools and our development techniques and approaches to take advantage of AI tools. So for instance, when you're when you're programming Crestron, and you want to use GitHub and Copilot together to manage your source code and do all of that, how can we further that integration? So the second of integrating the best AI services is a really important one. And then the third is how do we expose our APIs to ensure that our customers and integrators can integrate Crestron into their own AI stack. And so we think these are three really big trends that we're really excited about for the future of our industry. And at least this is how we're thinking about it. We know over time we'll continue to iterate and find new great applications as well.
So, I mean, in listening to you talk, a bunch of questions come to mind. One question I want to ask you right away is one area that I think a lot of people are wanting to know is when and how quickly will we get, because you guys build sophisticated control systems to a point where that could be, and I hate to use the term dumbed down through AI because that's probably not the right term. And maybe I don't really care behind the scenes how that happens. I'm more as an end user. How do I talk to like if I get into a room, something's not working, when could I get to a point where you have the technology where I can talk to the room or talk to the system and have it help me fix itself or figure out what I'm doing wrong? Because I mean, let's be honest, most of the time it's cockpit error, or we just need to reboot something.
Yeah, that's right. It's just a matter of engineering time to create the interface. The good thing is that technology exists today. We have the control platform. We have the integrations, at least on that fundamental layer. And now it really is writing the user interfaces to expose that interaction model. And teams are actively working on all of that today in Crestron. We've seen partners that are doing those kinds of integrations as well. I think it's a matter of months and quarters. It's not decades, right, before we can see that kind of an experience.
Okay, so let's talk about return to office. I mean, this was a big mantra for the last 3 years. Companies have been trying to get people to return to office. I think we've kind of given up. I think we've fallen into where we're going to be. I
Right.
don't think the mandates are really paying off for the big brands that are out there that are saying you have to come to the office, because a lot of workers just are going to just try to find another job. So we're in a place where we're going to have hybrid workers, we're going to have in-person workers, and we're going to have the need for them to communicate. To me, that does nothing but make me want to double down on the AV industry, because we're the solutions providers for that.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think that, it is clear that in-office collaboration is never going away, as is remote and hybrid collaboration. That's never going to go away. People have started to embrace that. We've proven that it can work. And so I think that what this does mean for our industry is that you're right. It is further investment in the infrastructure to enable this in every space. And what we're seeing from a lot of customers is customers are not taking their foot off the gas. They're going to continue in enabling those spaces, even if they have a return to office mandate where they want people in the office all the time. They still have to work with other remote offices and colleagues. They still have to work with partners, and so enabling that collaboration from a remote and a hybrid perspective is really critical. But more importantly, too, is when they're all in person, how do you ensure it's a great meeting when you're in person? You still need to share content, right? You still need to have that ability to have a really productive discussion, even when you're in the room. We have some customers that are using our Automate VX multi-camera solution just as video reinforcement in their big board meetings. Everyone is in person. There are no remote attendees, but they still use the camera system to show who's actively speaking and showing that dialogue. And so all of those things just lead to further technology investments, not less.
So you just said something I think is kind of interesting, that people are using that video, or they're using it for transcription purposes or to document the meeting. Wouldn't it be a good idea for an integrator to now offer that as a service where, in addition to that, right, which is sort of automated. I mean, you can use Zoom to do that too, but that means you have to launch a Zoom meeting and then you're sharing your content through Zoom, which is okay. But the problem is, let's be honest, it lowers the resolution when you're sharing content that way. And there's really no way around that, because they have to go for the 90% of the market, not the fringe. We're serving a higher end customer. Wouldn't it be a good idea for integrators to then take that one step further and say, okay, we can archive every meeting for you and make it easily searchable, and then have this database of content that creates, because of AI, FAQs, creates instructions, creates a directory of who's who in the company and what they do, recreates job descriptions based on what they're talking about, recreates applications. I mean, automates building. Like I could see, because really the video documentation of a meeting means that you have an archive of it, which means that AI can leverage it, which means that AI that can then automate some of the things you talk about in the meeting. Aren't we the industry to do that? I can't see somebody like Panopto coming into our industry, like they're in the higher ed market and K through.
Right.
I can't see them coming in and saying, oh, we have the solution for that, because that's a complicated system. I think our integrators should offer that as a service, and that's connecting you to AWS to, and being a little bit more creative in building that seamless experience for the future user.
Well, I think that's a great opportunity for our integrators and for our channel. They are experts in creating these kinds of experiences. They're technology experts in that they know many different technology platforms. They know how to bring them together, and they're boots on the ground, which is precisely what a lot of customers really need. And so I think all of these are really great opportunities for the integrator. I think the other side of that is that more and more customers are envisioning these kinds of experiences, and they're asking for it, which is a really exciting place for us all to be in. I mean, how long ago was it when we as an industry were convincing customers, you should really do this video conferencing thing, right?
Yeah. Well, it brings up kind of, I'm going to go back. I want to go back to point 2 in a second, but now you brought up my third thing I want to talk about is this new generation of end users, influencers, whatever you want to call it, who are decision makers, I guess, who are not educated on technology. Meaning, I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean, like, they're a media planner at an advertising agency, and they just want to get something done for their client. They don't even know how to ask the right questions. Or they're a teacher who also happens to run the room they teach in, and they just want to put equipment in there. They don't know how to ask the right question. I think the question is, how do our integrators find those end users? And then also, how do those end users get connected to our industry so they know, how do we make those connections? And isn't that a huge future potential for our market?
It is absolutely a huge future potential. I think that it really comes down to we as an industry need to show what we've done for others, what we're capable of doing. We need to be out there talking about these stories and unlocking the capabilities. Actually, tomorrow I'm going to the New York Giants, and we're going to see their draft room, and we're hosting a breakfast with them. Right, that's a really good example of the team had something they wanted done. They came to us and to an integrator, and then we helped make that possible. And now we're telling the world what we had done there. That's one room. There's only one New York Giants draft room in the world. But if people can look at that and get inspired by the way they might consider or approach the way they get their work done differently, then we've done our job. And so we as an industry, I think we need to continue to tell more of those stories and show more of those examples.
Well, there was a study done by Frost and Sullivan recently that showed that 70% of influenced or decisions are made by non-IT stakeholders. Are you addressing that? It's like, how can Crestron help with that? How can, because let's be honest, it's not easy to find these end users. I know this is one of the things that we've been working on as a company, is we partnered with AV Nation and re-engineered the way that we're approaching end users. We have a new website. We have a new set of newsletters that are focusing on end users. But we've done a really good job finding those end users that are kind of techie. How do you find the non-techie that don't even know our industry exists, but yet need our technology? Like what is the right formula there?
Well, I think that going back to the Frost and Sullivan report, the reason I think that that is significant and why it represents a great opportunity is that now that a lot of the non-AV, non-technical business leaders, they have expectations for how they want to run a meeting, how they want to run their business, even strategic elements of their own business, and how technology can help them. That's such a tremendous opportunity for us. Again, it's not the IT team, it's not the AV team shoving a solution down someone's throat. These non-technical people are walking in with an expectation and saying, this is what I want. And then we can help and go and deliver that. So I think this represents a shift and an opportunity that we as an industry can meet. Now we need to, as you say, go and meet that need. At Crestron, one of the things that we've been doing over the last 5 or 6 years is we've been shifting our branding to be our messaging to be inclusive of the end customer, not exclusively to the integrator. And that requires a lot of shift. You write different kinds of content, you tell different kinds of stories, your imagery is different. Even so far as when we go to trade shows like ISE, you have seen us go and we're doing these experiential demos rather than just a big array of black boxes on a wall. And so we as an industry, to appeal to these non-technical end customers, we also need to be less nerdy. We need to be more approachable. We need to speak their language. I mean, we need to be proudly very into what we do, but we need to convey it in a way that is approachable to those end users as well.
Yeah, and you're right, because let's be honest, we can't lead with the hardware to an end user because they don't know what you're talking about. You have to lead with the solution.
Right.
And I think some integrators do a really good job at that, but a lot don't, because they, unless you have your own demo center, right?
Right.
Actually, we should bring that up too, because if you haven't had a chance to check out, Crestron actually has experience centers. The new, you just renovated the one in New York. That's a way that you could bring, an integrator's welcome. From my understanding, talking to you months ago, was that you have no problem with integrators bringing in users and touring it to give them an idea of what is possible kind of scenario, kind of what you've done in your booth, and that you built little vignettes. But in that experience that you have in New York, you've actually built full-on rooms.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And while we host customers ourselves, we want integrators to bring their customers through and show that we don't even need to participate in the meeting. We'll be just a host for you. But it is important to help bring people in so they can get inspired and excited by that. Also, if anybody's working in the city and they just need a hot desk to land on and work for a few hours, reach out. We're happy to support. So you can kind of live in, work in an experience that shows you what's possible with that kind of technology. So demo centers are super important. And then, bring people to trade shows, right? And help them see what's possible. And then, of course, all of the meetings and the conversations and the webinars that we all host also further educate those non-technical customers that are looking for solutions.
You just mentioned hot desking inside of your own facility. I want to go
Yeah.
back to point number 2 and talk about desk booking and room scheduling, because this is going to become bigger and bigger, not just because of co-working spaces, but because what's happened is companies are constricting the size of their facilities to accommodate those that are coming in the office every day, which is less people. Let's say internationally, that average is somewhere around 65%. In the United States, it's about 45 to 55%, depending on what city you're in. And so therefore, they're also setting up co-working spaces, for lack of a better term, where this opportunity exists for desk booking and room scheduling and things like that, which was sort of a fringe product in our market and now has become more of a mainstream product.
Yeah, it has. I think that this is a really good example of a technology enabling a business to make a facility decision that was different. 10 years ago, when you didn't have the ability to book these hot desks, a business was going to run the risk that, hey, if I flip this model, people will want to work, but they won't be able to. Find a place to work. Now the technology ensures that they can schedule a space, that when they arrive, it's for them. But more importantly, the facility planner giving them the data around the utilization helps give them confidence about, okay, we've got it right, or we've got it wrong, right? And we need to adjust that. And so all of these scheduling solutions provide a great end user experience, whether it's a desk or a meeting space, while also giving them the data and the visibility to the utilization so that they can make those investment decisions.
So I want to ask you about BYOD in just a second, but I want to ask one of the questions that just came in from Gary Bulware, who's watching. Appreciate you joining us, Gary. His question was, what can we expect with, and this is specific to you, Brad, AI working with XIO, and will XIO be expanded to do more with the old product Fusion? There was a lot to like about Fusion in reporting. Thinking about that single pane of glass for tech response, I would like to come in every morning and look at a monitor that will tell me what kind of day I'm going to have. I like Gary's question about AI and fixing small things in the boardroom. I think, what you just said about giving him that data, I think what he's now saying, okay, since you have XIO, could you not marry that with AI and say, look, based on what happened yesterday, here's what's likely to happen today?
Yes, you could. You could certainly see a world where AI and finding new methods to interact with both the devices that are connected and the data that those generate. So XIO Cloud has continued to evolve and add new features. And so, Gary, you will see more and more of those capabilities showing up within XIO Cloud. Recently, we just adjusted the licensing structure to make it so that it is much more approachable for people to get in and use XIO Cloud. One of the things that we were trying to enable is enable a customer to connect every device they can to XIO Cloud without thinking about the licensing cost and all these things, because the more you have connected, the better visibility that you have. And so we will continue to expand that feature set. It is logical that AI would then come in to do that. I'm not here to announce any specific features related to that yet, but that is a ground that is fertile for those kinds of capabilities related to connected devices, the data, and the cloud management that enables.
Okay, and Dawn, hey Dawn, how are you doing? Dawn just had a point. I wouldn't say disagreeing with what we said, but she's like, hey, we still got to go to trade shows.
Sure.
Because she says a better use of her time to go and see 100 products at one time than to see one product at a time and an experience. I think it really depends. I agree with you, Dawn, is that if you're going to a trade show, for new product launches, or you need a place to see all the new stuff, a trade show is a place to be. Where I would say the asterisk exists is the problem is, and no offense to your brand, Brad, because not just you, but everyone's guilty of this, is that you go with the best intentions. We're going to deliver this in July, and then it's the following January. Yeah. I'm not talking about a specific product from Crestron or anything like that. I'm just saying in general. It's even stuff like mounts, where someone like Chief will launch a new mount, and they intend to deliver it in September, but it doesn't appear till the next February. The problem with that, Don, is that even though you see all the new stuff, what ends up coming out comes out later a lot of times. And what ends up coming out might actually have different feature sets and performance specifications than what was launched, because my experience, and I've worked for 2 big brands, and I've also consulted for a lot of big brands in our industry, is that marketing tends to drive what we show at trade shows, not engineering.
Yes, that's true. And I think, Don, to add some specificity to that, I prefer that we introduce a product weeks before the trade show, and then show it at the show, so that you have time, as somebody that has limited time, you can at least understand. You arrive at the show with an agenda: must hit here, must hit here, must hit here. So you're not surprised with stuff while you're at the show floor and busy running around. Learn about it and then go into the booth and get hands-on. We still think that getting hands-on is super critical, but if we can give you as much information ahead of time, then you can make it a really productive show.
Yeah. And these experience centers, I think, are just opportunities for you to kind of bring your customers without any fear of losing them. I think a lot of, to be honest with you, I mean, let's be honest. One of the things that in your integrators are scared about is that they bring an end user to a trade show, they're going to meet their competitor. It's kind of an unrealistic view, because if you have a good relationship with the end user, you're not going to lose them. But if it's an end user based only on price, then that's a risk. But most of the time, our relationships are stronger than that. I want to go back to my BYOD question for you, Brad, because that's becoming a bigger and bigger factor. And what's interesting to me is how Microsoft with Teams and how Zoom have embraced this with limitations. It's still better to use everything from ClickShare to AirMedia than it is to use the built-in sharing functionality. And also, you give the ability to do multiple platform join, right? I mean, that's a key thing. And then lastly, if I'm just a casual user of these platforms, I know how to use it on my computer, but I don't necessarily know how to use it on a room computer.
Right. Well, I think that BYOD, it's not, I don't think for any customer it should be either or. It should be yes and, where there are applications where you should have a dedicated room and a room system, so you can just walk in and push a button and it's good to go. That's hands down, you must have that. There are other scenarios where, because of user preference or whatever, that they prefer to be able to just plug in the device and want to be able to host the meeting that way, so that then they focus on the meeting rather than that technology. And if we can enable, and we do today, if we can enable customers to have that same flexibility and choice, it's super critical. And we think that's important. That's why we have invested in Flex Teams rooms and Zoom rooms. That's why we've also invested in AirMedia. And the good thing is that customers can come to one vendor to help solve that whole wide variety of use cases. And we think that that's the important case there. So you can't go all BYOD, you can't go all Teams rooms, or sorry, all just dedicated room systems. You need that flexibility. You should offer that choice to your end users as well.
Yeah, and there was a time where companies were saying we're going to be a Zoom company or a Teams company, but now companies have flipped, because they realize that is unless you're only internal, meaning you only have meetings with each other,
right?
Like banks. I mean, let's be honest, financial institutions, a lot of times they can do that. But yeah, I agree with you. Okay, so I want to take a few minutes. I want to know specifically, what Crestron is going to be doing over the next, say, the rest of this year. I kind of want to get an idea of, like, what are you going to launch? Is there anything that you can tell us? Is there, I know that you're big on the ecosystem approach that you have right now. And what can we expect to be added to the ecosystem? And, like, what kind of, I guess if you were to give me a forecast for 2025 with regard to where you see the areas that we need to focus as an industry, but also what we can expect from Crestron as a leader in the industry.
You want me to pre-announce some stuff, right? You want
I
me
mean,
to give
hey,
you
if
a
you don't
scoop.
mind saying something, that would be nice. But no, I recognize that's not going to happen.
No,
But
I no, it's the right question. And so there are three key areas that we focus on from a technology perspective, and we continue to invest in every day. And you'll see announcements along these lines throughout the rest of the year. Content, the ability to do content distribution, that's mostly enabled in our ecosystem through DMNVX, our audio over IP platform. So you'll see more announcements as we expand the portfolio for our video products. Our audio product portfolio under NVX will get better to our NAX amplifiers. We've got some really cool stuff happening there. But we've also added USB distribution recently with the NVX 384. You've got multi-input switching, you've got USB-C built on, so a lot of great stuff there. You'll see some additions to that content distribution portfolio. On the second one is collaboration. We will continue to invest as it relates to our Flex video conferencing and especially around our intelligent video stuff. We just released Face Direction, which is a super cool feature. We've got some new enhancements that will come and add to that later this year. And then, of course, our control platform. How can we make it super easy to design really beautiful interfaces that integrate with a lot of technology? How can we make it really easy to manage and monitor from the cloud? All of those things are things that you'll see us do new announcements related to throughout the rest of the year.
I think it's incumbent upon us as industry leaders to make sure we're upping the quality constantly, not settling for the it's good enough approach. I recognize there's value in the good enough approach, and a lot of companies are going to go that direction. I loved that random study that we published that NPR came out with and I don't know if you know this, but Steph talked to the Harvard researcher, and we actually did a segment on that where he talked about the data that was used to determine that, look, if you use a higher quality mic, people take you more seriously than if you use the mic built into a laptop. And the truth of the matter is, and hey, no offense to most Windows-based laptops, the Apple-based laptops have better microphones than the Windows-based laptops in general, right? So that's also a factor. Is like you never know how someone's perceiving the other end of your audio. I'm curious, sort of, because you kind of have to serve everyone in the industry. Kind of, what is your Brad's opinion on all that, and where do we decide to go high end, and how do we determine what's good, when we stay with the good enough approach?
Well, it is a tricky question, but I think that it really comes down to what's the kind of culture that you're enabling within your company and the collaboration. And if it's super important that everyone's on an equal playing field, and you want to enable really great brainstorming and discussions, you better invest in the right technology for that. And then where are you going to take it? And there are a lot of complicated physics involved with making sure you have a great speaker setup, a great microphone setup in all kinds of spaces. I think ultimately the big takeaway, though, for organizations is you can't just phone it in from an audio perspective. You have to pay attention and get really great hardware inside of the room. Software is not going to replace the great hardware that's required there. And so we have been enabling that, both from bringing really great microphones for small spaces, whether it be in a sound bar or our Flex Pods, but then also integrating with the best microphone suppliers out there for those really complex spaces, like Sennheiser and their ceiling microphones. They have some really great products there. But we have made it a priority to support all of those so that you can deliver really great audio in all of the spaces that you need to work within.
And in fact, what a great segue into our next session with Mark Donovan. I'm going to get to that in just a second. From Audio Technica, that's one of the brands that you're working with, obviously.
Yep.
And because it does matter, the quality of the audio does really matter. Brad, this has been awesome. I really appreciate your willingness to come on here and be a little daring. You gave us some hints at some new stuff. I want to ask you one quick question, and you can just answer it yes or no, because you mentioned that you're going to be introducing more and more audio and video acquisition and distribution products, could we potentially see content distribution? You actually wrapped it into content distribution that includes video archiving, audio archiving, and things like that, marrying that with AI. Is that something that you're looking at for XIO Cloud and maybe some of the future platforms?
We aren't currently today. We would prioritize integrating into services like that.
So that's something you feel like the integrators need to take what you're giving them and maybe even use AWS or some of the other services out there and make that an added value.
Yeah, that's right. I think it's a big opportunity for them to pull those really best in class pieces together to be able to enable that. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, look, Brad, thank you very much. Of course, you can learn all you want to know about Crestron at simply going to Crestron.com. Brad, I appreciate you coming. What's great about this is we spent almost 40 minutes together, and you only talked about Crestron 3 times out of 40 minutes. This was literally a great session where we talked about kind of where you see the industry as a bellwether, and I appreciate your willingness to do that.
Anytime. Thank you so much, Gary. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, and that was great.